Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, episode number 331, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, and joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, fellow deplorables and Nazis and all that other stuff.
And I'll just, it's still kind of germinating.
Yeah, and the thing about it is like, it's sort of reflective of what's going on over there. They are having a hard time figuring out how to attack, right? So it's just a lot of name calling because it's so much policy coming at you so fast, like you're trying to drink out of a fire hydrant, and it's like it's coming too fast, and they can't process, and they can't keep up, and they don't know what they're opposed to from one day to the other, and all they know is if Trump has anything to do with it, they hate it.
Right. I mean, that's basically the world that we kind of live in. I mean, we have talked about this numerous times, I think, on the show, just about kind of this how Trump has been kind of like a fire hose himself. They're throwing so much stuff out there that the Democrats have a very hard time concentrating on any one thing. Maybe it's a lesson that he learned from his first term. Is that it allowed them to get too concentrated and go after him on these things. But if you're throwing 5 or 10 things at them and you're constantly changing, the Democrats are just, they just really don't know where to go. I mean, they're already, they've been struggling, really, for a while, particularly since, they nominated Kamala, you know, uh, for trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, losing an election, just not being able to control anything, on the levers of government has really thrown them off course,
Right.
probably more so than I've ever seen this happen in my lifetime in terms of there's so much disarray, and Trump.
And it's not just you're making a terrific point, but it's not just the electeds, right? It's not just that they lost elections. It's like, it appears that like the most of the USAID was funding most of the Democrat Party, the Democrat programming on TV, right? There are people saying that, part of the reason that, the CBS decided that no longer could lose 40 million a year on Colbert was because, that was USAID money involved in that. And they quit getting that money, and they're like, okay, now it's just a $40 million loss, and we're not doing that. So it's like, it's all the ways that they use power, right? It's all the things that they did to sublimate, undermine Trump the first time around. It's gone. They realize, he paid very close attention to how they got it last time, and man, they have summarily rubbed out almost all the Democrat levers of power in Washington, and that's what's really freaking them out. And now you have these things come out. Tulsi Gabbard keeps releasing, and other people keep releasing, and you basically have a thing now where Adam Schiff is in a huge amount of trouble, right? Obama could be in trouble. There was a guy who wrote yesterday. Do you follow Coffee and COVID, that
No.
newsletter? Jeff Childers, he comes up with some good stuff. Sometimes he's a little out front of the action, but a lot of times he nails stuff that you didn't think about. But his theory is this whole thing about Trump, the cops in DC, taking over the police department in DC, is because they're a week or so away from starting to arrest some people that are going to cause some, that could cause some major upheaval in the country. So who could that be? Well, probably going to be Brennan. I guess Roger Stone now says that Brennan has fled to Austria, and that MSNBC has built a studio for him. So it looks like he's still here. I don't know how Roger Stone knows that, but it's what he wrote, and so, you're good, and it's not far to Obama on this, right? There's not really a limiting principle that stops this from getting to Obama at this point. So, what happens if they get ready to arrest Obama, right? And he doesn't have immunity for this, and it's the things that the Biden pardoned all these people for. This is not covered for most of them. So there's about to be some big upheaval in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to take all of this with a grain of salt and just kind of take it one day at a time, because we're the information flow is so heavy. You're getting so much stuff out there. You have to kind of sort all this out and try to figure out, how many people have gone a little bit too far down the conspiratorial tube there versus those that have good, solid information. Like you said, I mean, how does Roger Stone know? Maybe he does have some things, but there's plenty of far-fetched theories out there. Our world allows for that.
Yeah.
The internet allows us to have just
Yeah,
about
and it's
anything
amazing
we
how
want.
many far-fetched things, like you wait a couple of weeks and they are exactly true.
Sometimes it happens. Yeah, sometimes it happens. It's like, I mean, look, I mean, I know that I have to watch myself. I have on my iPad, the Apple News app, but I mean, I don't pay for the Apple. I don't pay for the Apple Plus. So if it's got a plus sign on it, I haven't broken down to pay for the extra news. But it's interesting when I scroll through because they do have, they do have a lot of good sources, or I mean, interesting. I mean, they're basically culling. They've worked out agreements with the USA Today's, Wall Street Journals, whatever, New York Times, and they're pulling some headlines in, and they're trying to find out a way to maintain eyeballs into the whole Apple ecosystem. But as you scroll down, and it almost seems like it never ends. There's all kinds of other stuff on culture and sports and whatnot and stuff like this. Some websites or some places I've never heard of before. I get a little bit leery, and stuff like that. But that is kind of that whole kind of clickbaity or whatever they're calling it today. Link bait. Where you see something and say, oh, well, that looks interesting, and that and the magazine or the publication listed sounds legit, and then you get in there and sometimes you're like, I think they're going to lead me down nothing but a bunch more things until they sell me something or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
you know so I mean, they carry plenty of stuff from BuzzFeed, and I'm like, yeah, I've been there, done that with BuzzFeed, 20 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm way past that. But yeah, you just have to kind of watch your sources, and everybody's going to have we have our own sources that we prefer to watch or to listen to read, and so that varies from person to person. It's not that confined ecosystem of where we were limited pre the bigger, larger today's internet of, yeah, the newspapers might get a website, but we were still kind of contained into the ABC, CBS, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, whatever, all of that. Some cable systems, maybe, with the CNNs of the world, things like this. But now, we really have an explosion of things that we can go and choose a lot of our own sources and choose what we want to believe and kind of sort it out from there. And, we you watch some of the former Fox News stars. They've gone out and hung up their own shingle and have got tremendous followings and are making a lot of money doing so. I just saw a story about Megyn Kelly and comparing her online views on YouTube to those of CNN, online. And I think that she said, she quoted a figure that I think there were about 8 million views or something like that behind CNN's online views. And then November election time, they beat, they had more, she had more viewers than CNN. So it is now, now things are just driven by choice. I mean, the Stephen Colbert or Colberts, as he was before,
Colbert, his
of
sister,
the
who
world.
runs the port of Charleston, is known as Colbert.
Yeah.
So, who knows? I mean, I don't blame him. If
Look,
that's
look,
all you got to
look.
do to make that kind of cake, I'll do that.
It's is it Target or is it Target,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I mean, for that kind of cake, you will be Don Irvine.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, who knows? I mean, it's just right.
Whatever it takes.
You want to pay me that kind of money? Do whatever you want.
That's right.
I'll pronounce my
I
last
don't
name.
care what you call me
I
if
have
you
no
put
shame.
my
I have
name
no
right on the
pride.
check.
So we do that. So those things are happening. But it's interesting. I mean, yeah, you bring up the whole DC National Guard thing. You know, I don't know if we're really sure exactly what's happening there. I mean, that's why I think there's a lot of speculation, kind of runs rampant at this point in time. And and they didn't go and put the National Guard right now into, say, the higher crime areas per se.
Yeah,
They
they've already busted like 50 people.
they but they've made also a big presence along the National Mall and the
Yeah,
monuments and stuff like that. But the thing is that, I mean, so the DC Police Union, this is a 30-day event unless you can get Congress to extend it and approve it. But in 30 days, a lot can happen.
yeah,
And in the media saying, but crime is down to a 30-year low. It doesn't mean that crime is totally gone. It
right. And it's not, and it's not really down. I mean, the guy who provided those stats is suspended right now for rigging the stats.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways you can report it and,
Right.
and look at it and look at the overall crime picture.
Plus,
I mean,
somebody had so they said, you know, like 2023, 2022, 2021 all have more murders than there's no down, right? They had fewer, so it's actually come back up a little bit.
yeah. So I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can do that. I mean, crime statistics are, I think they do tend to be somewhat fungible among those are reporting. It's not. It's just you can
Yeah.
classify the crime the way you want
Right.
to do
That's
it.
another thing that's come out. The police union has said, but I think this is really important, is that that you bust somebody, you get some guy armed robbery, and you catch him coming out of the liquor store, and he says before you can get the guy in the car and headed to jail, some higher ranking guy will pull up and say, charge him with shoplifting or something, so it's doesn't put a violent crime on our record, and we can charge him with less and let him out sooner. So I mean, they're actively trying to their thing of their way to tamp down violent crime is to quit calling things violent crime that are violent crime.
Yeah, I mean, what's the definition of a violent crime? There's just no.
I mean, there is a definition, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not sure what all exactly is included in it, but
right, but they play around with this. I mean, there isn't a police chief or a big city mayor or whatever, or even small city. There's a governor. No one wants to report high crime statistics. I mean,
yes. Then you saw they asked the police chief, who is a DEI hire writ large. So what is the chain of command now? And the police chief said, "What is a chain of command?"
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing here? How does the chief of police not even understand the concept of chain of command? And it's a woman who was hired as a DEI person. That's how she started out in the department, was DEI.
Yeah, and I don't, I'm willing. I'm going to wait and see how this turns out with the National Guard and exactly what goes on there. Maybe some of the things you said here at the beginning of the show will come to fruition. Maybe some other things will happen along the way that, that Trump will they'll have gained some ground against some of the crime that does continue to undermine and undergird DC and make the city a safer city. Who I don't really know. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy. I'm not the kind of guy who's basically ready to say, I'm going to spend, I'm going to go down to DC and walk around the streets of DC at night alone.
Right. That's right.
I want to, if I'm going to do it at all, I'm going to be, in a group of people. I want there to be at least 4 people or something like that. Just because I think there's a chance in my mind that there's going to less of a chance of being assaulted or robbed or whatever if I'm in a group versus if I'm alone, where they can just isolate. So,
I mean, did you see also the Leadership Institute is in Arlington, right? And there's some guys who hang out in front of their Antifa people, and when you come out of work, they scream at you that you're a Nazi and all this kind of stuff. And Lori says that the same people turn up at Heritage. Like, what are you doing? It's just violence in the street, and it's dangerous, right? Because people, most people just pass them, move on, but somebody's going to take it on, and somebody's going to not have a choice but to take it on. So, they keep they're this angry, they're this unhinged. You can't trust those people are not going to get violent. In fact, you kind of count on them getting violent.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. When I think about Trump, I mean, he goes in all those different directions. He and his people have just been, they look at things, they think, and they say, hey, we've got an opportunity here. Here's a crack. We've got 30 days where we can do this.
Yeah.
And no one can really, the Democrats and liberals can scream to high heavens, but it'll be completely illegal. After that point in time, you need some authorization. That's fine. But, he continues to do these things where he kind of stretches these things and says, hey, we can do this and then let the courts figure this out or whatever. In the meantime, he's just throwing these things out. And then, like we said at the beginning, the liberals go crazy. They don't have the levers of power. They just, they're just in complete disarray on things, and they just don't have a good solid answer to things. I guess they keep thinking that a lot of these things, if they cobble it together, they'll have a chance in 2028. But where is their bench? Where are their credible candidates in 2028?
What would you be? The other thing is the other question on this, like you kind of raised in your remarks, is what's your platform going to be? We don't want crime stopped in DC, right? We don't want all these things Trump is doing. You're on the end of all these 80-20 issues. We don't want boys and girls sports. You're going to say, oh, I'm campaigning on reversing all these Trump decisions. Like, Trump has chosen a bunch of really easy issues, right? And it's going to be hard for them to say, I'm against that. I'm against cleaning up the streets of DC. I'm against, I want DEI restored, right? That's not going to happen. USAID restored, PBS restored. How are you going to argue for that? How do you stake that claim? The country is not. It'll be a very long time, if ever, before the country is ready to really roll back much of what he's doing at all. They may hate Trump, right? But they don't hate what he's doing, right? What are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, I'm for opening the borders again, letting everybody in here like we had it. 10 million a year, or 10 million coming in every 4 years. You can't do that. Like he's closed these doors forever. In these, like, Department of Education, somebody going to come along and say, hey, I will restore the Department of Education after 3 years of there's been no Department of Education and no one's noticed, right? How are you going to do that? Right? These things and these people, the people who run this stuff and the whole, process of creating, that brand of bureaucrat is being disrupted. Like all those people, who are like on a glide path to do whatever for the Department of Education, they got to get on a glide path to do something else now, right? And by the time, anyone has the political wherewithal to try to bring it back, those people will be long gone. They'll be on to other careers, other things. You're not just standing all this back up the minute Trump leaves, especially if his Vance or whoever wins, the Republican wins next time.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good point, because Trump, by basically these things, by rolling these things back as fast and as early in his term as he does, makes your point, because when he leaves office, it will have been 3+ years, or 3 years, give or take, since these organizations, these agencies existed in their former form. Right. Therefore, bringing them back is not going to be easy. Because the opposite's always true too, right? I mean, when there was talk all the time about Americans with Disabilities Act or Obamacare and things like that. We're going to take care of that the next time around. But once programs are really entrenched, they tend to grow, and it's hard to get them back, take them back. Yeah. But
Obamacare, that's an interesting one to bring up, though, because it's not really intact, right? The employer mandate's gone, the employee mandate is gone. That was really the heart of Obamacare, right? What is left is bloated Medicare, Medicaid rolls, and Trump's dealing with that. Like Obamacare may not be repealed, but every every facet of it that actually harmed Americans is gone or will be gone as soon as Trump is done with that. And now they have access to all the data. The court ruled, yesterday, the day before, that Doge has access to all this data, and so it will be taken care of pretty quickly. Medicaid was for people in poverty, right? So you have, in poverty right now is less than 30,000 a year, right? Okay, so you have all these people making 80 or 90,000 a year on Medicaid, and so that's what he's going after. It's like, you added all these people. The day Obamacare was signed, New York State alone, just New York State, put 525,000 people on the Medicare, Medicaid rolls, right? Put them on the public dole for healthcare. You can't tell me that there were 525,000 people in New York that needed to go on the public dole for health insurance immediately, right? But that's what they did, right? So that's what's getting unraveled, is we're getting it down to where it's a poverty program again, so we can afford it.
Yeah, no, I mean the whole Medicaid thing in Obamacare was this whole sham. I mean, the government, it's set up where the government basically was paying for the whole thing for a number of years, and then they would pare it back a little bit after a few years. But it was this little carrot they dangled out there. It says like, hey, look, we're going to give you this money. You can add all these people to your rolls. Maybe in the end, maybe some of those people actually will vote for you if they actually vote at all. But they could, you kind of put them into your little poverty ecosystem and things like that, even though they wouldn't qualify under other circumstances. Trying to roll that back is a little tricky, but it isn't impossible. You look at all these different things. Obamacare, I think that the best move that the Republicans have made, in that was that's just not try to take the whole thing down at once. They went at it at the edges, and they took away those things, like you said, remove the mandate and things like this. And so they basically weakened it to the extent that it's a shell of what Obama wanted. It's a shell of what Congress originally passed. So it doesn't really have a lot. But the Medicaid thing is still out there, and the states are learning a painful lesson. They went whole hog on this, and what happens is now they're like, the cost of providing care for those people skyrocketed, and the budget deficit, have just ballooned because, the Medicaid program is not a federal program; it is a state program with fund that gets a lot of federal money.
Yeah,
they get federal funding, but the states are supposed to operate that program. So the government's like, well, so you've got a deficit. We don't have a promise that we have to actually give you extra money if you're running a deficit. If you put people on the roll, if you can't control them and control the cost of people on Medicaid, that's not the federal government's problem. That is the state's problem. And so they run into the thing like, you add that many people to your rolls, you better be ready to handle the extra expenses of dealing with that.
Many of those people are illegal, not supposed to be in the country anyway, criminals, not supposed to be eligible for benefits.
That's there's so many things that the medical establishment has been learning a painful lesson for the last couple of years, because the government set up a program for this Medicare Advantage, and they basically paid these healthcare providers, a lot of money to provide, Medicare for seniors as an alternative to other insurance options when you get Medicare. So, you take Medicare A and B, but you should have a supplemental plan of some sort to handle the other things that Medicare does not cover. Medicare Advantage was great for a lot of people at first because they thought, hey, look, I pay zero in premiums in a lot of these plans, and I get all kinds of care and I get all kinds of benefits. They're throwing at them, gyms and spa treatments and all these kinds of stuff.
Meals,
because because the plans were making money the way they were charging the government. Well, the tide has turned, expenses have risen, and they're not making money off of these people anymore. And they're like, oh, we now need to pare these people back off the rolls. People who took that,
pare back the benefits.
Pare back the benefits, and they're kind of stuck. As a senior, having looked at that, and but having been advised well by an insurance broker, I never bid on the Medicare Advantage. I just went ahead and paid. My wife and I pay, for a supplemental plan. I guess it's called. I think it's Part D, is what it under their
Part
thing.
D's prescription.
Part D's prescription. So maybe mine is C. I don't know. There's there's an A and a B.
Part C, and there's also a like that's what Aflac
maybe
does.
it's a G. Maybe it's an F or G. There's so many things in the alphabet, right? I'm like, what? I don't. All I know, what I do know is that basically I've got a plan that basically is the secondary insurance, and it picks up whatever on that Medicare doesn't cover, and then if I still have a deductible to meet and everything like that. But other than that, I'm covered. But the Medicare Advantage people, if the problem for them now is just that by opting for Medicare Advantage and not getting this plan G or whatever this is, they lost the ability to actually get that other plan, insurance plan, without qualifying, without having to have a medical history, and so now if they do want to get a plan like mine, they actually have to have, they can be rated. I mean, the insurance company can actually say, no, we're not going to take you. You're too sick. Whereas for me, I just glided right in there, and they have to take me. They had to take my wife. So, to me, that was a huge selling point, is that, considering my health history and everything, for the last couple of years, it's like that was extremely important to be able to do that, because I could have easily been rejected otherwise. So we just see all these things going on, and the overall too, just to, USAID, who is actually going to wind up missing them, and how will they ever be able to bring that back, and if the Democrats somehow manage to take over in 2028, and when they take office in 2029, after having been gone or decimated, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, everybody's gone after September 30th of this year, right? How do you resurrect that? NPR, huge funding reduction. How do you actually go back and do that? How do you, like you said, how do you sell voters that any of this is necessary? How many times
or was ever necessary?
Right.
The other thing about the NPR is like, how do you appeal to anybody? I mean, you're basically going to be using the Act Blue fundraising list, right? Because none of us are going to give you money. We want to see you out of business. So I mean, you're down to, you've annoyed half the country to the point that you're never going to get a penny out of them, and now you have a big fundraising crunch.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing too is just that you remember, what was it? Anita Dunn, famously years ago said that the Fox News was an arm of the Republican Party. Well, National Public Radio really is an arm of the Democratic Party, funded by us.
Right. That's right. That's a key point. When people talk about that, it's like, oh, it's not biased. Well, yeah, it is biased. Okay, well, I mean, what's your problem? There's like an industry of getting people signed up, right? There's like consultants out there. They don't charge a lot because it's not really worth a lot, but they do. But there are people out there that you can go to and say, please help me sign up for all this. But that's a very good point. Is they block participation in these programs or they reduce participation in these programs by making it really onerous to get into it. He's right about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, to that, I mean, you can go back to your other point here in a second, but I mean, to that is that it is, this is the problem with government, is that they put all these things out, rule making, and, all these people who actually created all the structure for this, it's kind of a landmine. You have to kind of look at that and say, what's going on there? With Medicare, as with the broker, I encourage anybody who's about to turn 65 and and needs to go out file for Medicare, is to just get an insurance broker and let them show you the pros and cons of doing this and doing that, and the brokers, because the Medicare is a government program, they get nothing. They really can't, and they can't really do anything except but they will be able to make a living, somewhat off of recommending to you paid insurance programs, right? Health insurance programs. I have a problem with that. because I look back right now and I say, my broker did a fabulous job. He's uh, and never met the guy, only spoke to the guy on the phone. The great Herbert Baumgarten, Orthodox Jew, loved this guy to death because he has not given me a bad advice yet. He knows his stuff. He focuses really on healthcare. That's his big thing. And he knows it. And that's part of it. Is like, he's not distracted by a lot of other things. And you can ask him a question. He'll just give you a straightforward answer about healthcare and make sure that you do that. And just, here are the pros and here are the cons. But Charles is right. So, otherwise you go through this, it's like, why is this so hard to understand? I thought it was reasonably intelligent, but the government makes this like, am I doing this right? It is just, my broker basically led me step by step through the Medicare application process online. Do this, say yes, no, and then he says, and then you'll wait for your confirmation and everything like that. When you get your card, your number, call me back. So then we can then start doing the next phase and get you covered for what Medicare doesn't cover, because I need your Medicare number, that type of thing in order to do the next part. So it is. Anyway, back to your other point about, NPR and everything else.
Oh, that's another one that you're not going to be able to reassemble it. You're not going to be able to get support to ever do it again. And they made no effort to reach out. And, Early Berliner warned them. He's like, he's put out that essay. He's like, you're moving way, way away from your audience. And no one who works here is a Republican, right? So you don't say you're hearing all the voices, because you're not, right? You went 87 for 87 on one party. So and then so they're stuck with, and this is like a lot of the left stuff right now. You're denying something that's plainly obvious, right? Like now the Democrats are denying that there's crime in DC. Like, I'm sorry, but like everyone knows there is. And like you saying, oh, we got some little report that says, crime fell or whatever. No, it didn't. Everyone who lives there knows that. And you notice, like, there's a lot of interviews out there with the people who live in these neighborhoods who are saying, sure, bring them in. Let's clean up the street. So, the people who live through this, they understand it. And you're not going to be able to, this kind of things like Trump's, like you say, he's only going to do this for 30 days. If he tries to extend it, it'll be because they've made a case that they're making real progress. And if they're making real progress, then it's going to be popular, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, to deny there's crime. I mean, we had that intern, right?
Yeah.
This was only a little over a month ago when he was killed in DC, and it's like,
yeah, there were two of them, the two interns, and then there was the big balls getting beat up, trying to defend his girlfriend.
Yeah,
he probably would have been beaten to death, but the cops finally showed up. 20 minutes into this fight. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and I'm going to tell you something. Okay, the DC Bar Association is trying to disbar Jeffrey Clark, who is one of Trump's attorneys, over a memo he wrote but didn't turn in. Right? It's clearly just, we're all Democrats and you're a Trump guy, and we're going to punish you for your association with Trump and strip you of your ability to practice law in DC. It was when the DC bar voted that they were going to indeed go ahead and try to disbar this guy. That is when all this talk about the cops taking over DC started. If the mayor wants the cops, the federales out of DC, she might suggest to the bar to back off on Jeffrey Clark, right? It's totally political witch hunt. It's totally, the timing is terrible. And I think that's why Trump said, you know what, screw them. They don't, I'm going to teach them about law enforcement. They'll understand when they get done with me.
All right, I'm going to switch to another topic. We just have a lot to go through, but it looks like we won't make it all the way through today. I say this every week, and we just keep going and going. I don't know. Maybe that whole thing is making this a better show overall. I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know what's going on here.
They told themselves.
Yeah. Anyway, I do want to talk about gerrymandering, and what's happened, because I mean, since the
Right.
time we've been off, we've had this big thing going on in Texas. I mean, we are in 2025. Texas is trying to, redistrict, in the mid-decade, and kind of realign seats, and hopefully for them, get more Republicans, and shift the Democrats, around, and the Democrats, in order to prevent uh, a quorum from going. The Democrats in the state legislature fled to Illinois and then New York, and then opened up this whole debate, I guess, about California, Illinois, New York as well. About, well, look, if they're going to do it, why can't we do it? Because I mean, we control these things, and we could go back and do this. Now, to be honest, I really, I'm a fuddy duddy on this, I guess. I would just say, look, you do this once every 10 years, and just do this, and then and then you get a chance, and then you do it again, and and this mid-decade thing, I am not crazy about at all. They have the right to do it. If they get it done, fine. But I do think that it does, it can start, a lot of these other states would look at it and say, well, why can't we do this? And then I don't know. I think the situation becomes a lot more chaotic than it already is. But the Democrats apparently have returned to Texas, so I guess this is going to actually happen.
Yeah, it is going to happen. And like, I believe that Maryland 6, the thing, and they rubbed out Roscoe Bartlett. I believe that was a mid-decade redistricting too, right? And the other thing is like, normally I see what you're saying, but the pool of voters has changed pretty dramatically, because you've taken out all these illegals and all this other stuff. So like, and you're finding cleaning up voter rolls. I mean, California has now lost more than 1.5 million people off its voting rolls because just cleanups, and that's without any help from Orange or Los Angeles counties, which two of the biggest. I mean, Los Angeles is the biggest county in the country, but and obviously Orange is a huge county too. So and that's those are. I mean, they're not all Democrats, but they're mostly Democrats. They're probably 70% or more Democrats. So the elections, the situations that they're assessing have changed, right? And so I see where Texas is coming. Texas has changed a lot with voter roll cleanup, and especially getting rid of illegals, right? That's really made a big difference in Texas. So I see why they're doing it. I see I see the thing about it. The other thing is like, you can't really. Their thing is, we'll get you back and we'll gerrymander too. Okay, well, California's already gerrymandered to the point where if the things he's talking about doing, the seats he's talking about strengthening or whatever, if he does that, it will make other seats more vulnerable. So like, he can play around at the margins on this, but if he tries to make any big changes, he's going to expose probably as many people as he helps, right? So and I think the Democrats are going to say, once the political heat is off this issue, make your noise, look like a crusader if you want, but don't really try to do this, right? Same with Hochul, right? There are 4 seats in New York that keep getting gerrymandered back and forth, and she recently gerrymandered them in favor of her, right? And the state fought the maps in court, right? So they effectively got a mid-decade gerrymander in the last 6 or 8 months. So in fact, it was for the last election. It was before the last election, so it was before November that they right at the end, they got four seats flipped their way, and I think we got one of those seats. I think we won one of those seats. So yeah, it looks like between that and the voter registration numbers that are coming in all over the country. I think the Republicans have added. The Republicans took, if you recall, they took the advantage in voter registration shortly before the election in last year. It was the first time they'd been ahead in 40 years, right? And now, since the election, they've added almost 2 million people to their advantage, to their lead. So, all the voter registration trends are saying Republican. And it's a mid-term election. The president's party always struggles in those, but I think this time the Republicans could actually gain seats.
Yeah, I mean, so this whole gerrymander
Oh,
thing is
one more thing on that before we go, because this is also a huge part of that. The Supreme Court is going to consider a case out of Louisiana challenging these districts that were created solely to produce a black member of Congress. And like, is that still a constitutional thing that we can do? Remember when they first did that, Sandra Day O'Connor said, 25 years, we won't need this, right? So it's been long past 25 years. So, that'll be an interesting case too. That district is ridiculous. So if you know your map of Louisiana, right, it's a boot. Shreveport is at the top left of the boot. This district includes black neighborhoods in Shreveport and slices down very thinly all the way to black neighborhoods in the north part of Baton Rouge, which is 230 or 40 miles away. So, and it's just a very narrow slice, designed solely to give that seat to a black person. So you're going to lose some seats if the court holds that district is illegal. Louisiana goes back to its old maps. Then other people will go back to old maps too, who had to rearrange districts to promote black representation, and that could cost them 6 to 8 more seats, the Democrats.
Yeah, so the thing, my comment about gerrymandering that jumped over. So I hate gerrymandering to begin with. I mean, the districts that we've had just around the country generally tend to be crazy. But as you have said before, and some of my other friends, elections have consequences. So we also know this is a result of elections. You vote for Republicans in the state legislature, you will probably get a mostly red, map drawn as much as they can. They will gerrymander. Democrats. I mean, I live in Maryland, and I see it
one of the most
firsthand.
gerrymandered states.
Yeah,
I do love that. Like the Platypus district is getting some attention. I don't know if you've seen. There's been some writing about. That's the one that's like. It's everything but the Eastern Shore, and then it's Dorchester, and then it's other side of Baltimore, and it's like this big thing that's totally done to strengthen Democrat chances to win that seat.
right. So I mean, and this, part of the reason that I think that maybe there's not as much overall uproar about anything that Texas is doing. I mean, there is some, but most of the complaints are coming from the Democrats, the liberals, is because we've had so many more court challenges. The way the lines have been drawn is that you have seats that were set for, say, 2022, but then they were redrawn again for 2024 because the court, the Democrats, they appealed to the courts, and then the governor, the legislature went ahead and then remapped those, redrew those, and then made them more favorable to the Democrats. So we've seen a lot of the creep going on, so that as you said, I mean, there are districts that were different in 2024 than they were in 2022. So maybe this is part of the new normal in a sense. But the Democrats' hypocrisy on this too is the whole thing with Jay Pritzker. It's like come on, you're governing one of the most gerrymandered states around.
Exactly.
Gavin Newsom. They have an independent redistricting commission. He has, in order to do anything, I think he has to get the voters to vote and approve to suspend that authority or something like that. Then they can do it, but then it's only temporary, and they have to come back and kick in. And then then you've got Eric Holder out there with his his supposed independent redistricting thing, which is nothing but a sham to make sure that Democrats control Congress forever and ever. They're not about fairness and all that in any way, shape, or form. So I wonder too, though. It's like, can we not find a way? This is maybe still too pie in the sky, at this point, because AI is playing a bigger part of our overall lives. Is that if we can reach a point where where AI is able to take the information that and just look at that without bias. In essence, just get the demographic information, get the voter roll information, whatever, and just start, and then look at, just take the map and just start, saying, how many ever, voters are supposed to be in your district. We will do that, and we will try to keep that whole district contiguous. and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, I'm just curious as to if we ran that across the country without any interference from politicians, how would the map look? Would it be more Republican, be a little more Democrat, or would it just kind of be somewhat even? I don't know off the top of my head because I haven't sat down there to look at anything like that. But I remember when I used to talk about this with Spencer, that it would be neat to have try to do this in an unbiased way. You'll never get it past the politicians, initially, but over time, maybe AI is gonna it's taken over some things. Maybe you let AI draw some of your maps and see what happens.
I mean, I think it's a worthwhile project to just see what you would get.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then let the Larry Sabatos of the world go through that and see, like, okay, who would win?
right.
Based on what we
give,
know.
give it to the data scientists and say, tell us, what how this turns out. Right now, I mean, we are definitely in an era where everybody's definitely trying to protect their own turf, and it's a struggle with with Republicans having just barely controlling the House. That you want to strengthen that majority where you can. And as you said, midterm elections, usually never great for the for the incumbent president. So a little extra cushion does not hurt, as they go into 2026 for that at all.
Yeah. The other thing is like Virginia, I guess they've come up with some kind of commission. I don't know how much power it actually has, but for, most of Virginia's existence, the redistricting was done by the congressional delegation getting in the room and working it out. And you think, okay, backroom politics, this and that and the other, but and they're all doing it so they'll survive, right? They're all doing it to promote their own incumbency. So at least you have everybody's motive straight, right? You know what everybody's going to say, but what helps me generally will help you in that. For instance, where I live, I'm in District 11. I have been in the recent past in District 10, but they swapped my precinct, which is in this general area. My precinct is right at 70% Democrat. So they put mine into 11, which is, which was Connolly and will soon be Waukesha, I guess. I don't see him losing at this point. And 10, which is a swing district, got swing year. They got some Republicans, like the Sully district, which was the last district in the county to have a Republican outside of Pat Harity in Springfield. So, which Pat is just his own force, and he can stand up to it. But so the point is, I hate to say this, but we belong in the 10th, in the 11th district, right? We are in political keeping with the 11th district. We are our interest in voting patterns are the same to an extent that us and the 11th district and Chantilly are not. Also, it's cut off a bunch of the Prince William. The 11 used to go way down into Prince William, and I don't think it does anymore. So you do end up with districts that are more contiguous because you're trading contiguous parts, right? And it is informed by the people who should know the electoral map the best, the office holders. I don't know that I love that, but it is a way of doing it.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. So I mean, it's like, we've been around long enough. If you live in enough places, you don't even have to live in that many places, actually. Because of redistricting, you sit there and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're in a different district after redistricting. I have been in so many districts, I can't even count them anymore in the two homes that we've lived in our marriage, in our 40-year marriage. And I just think it's kind of silly. I go way back to when they redistricted, and our district went, Montgomery. It was mostly Montgomery County, but it was a slice of Tacoma Park. And Peter Franchot ran for office, and he was. I mean, his name recognition in Montgomery County was fine. His name recognition in Tacoma Park was terrible. And it's like, why are we going over to Tacoma Park
He's
exactly?
not nearly liberal enough for Tacoma Park.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery County, yeah, is exactly right. So, but it's gotten so bad for me is that I don't even bother to keep track of where it is. When it's my time to vote, I just look down and I say, oh, okay, so I'm in 6 this year, I'm in 4, I'm in 8. I've been in all those districts, in the last 40 years, and it just keeps switching, going back and forth. And so I get different representatives and different chances to have maybe a say. When we were
What is it?
district,
What is it now? What are you in now?
I think I might be an 8. I don't know. I said because 6 was a relatively competitive district, and I didn't get to vote for that the last time around. So it's just I'm just like I give up. The Democrats in this state, have just rigged this thing. They realize they can't figure out a way to squeeze Andy Harris out. So they just isolate him, and then they make everything else so the Democrats will win everything else. I guess the only plus to all of this is that Wes Moore's uh, approval rating has dropped from 65 to 50%. Uh, Probably after because of all those tax increases and fees that
Yeah,
we've taken
inability
on.
to do anything he promised to do. Yeah, it was weird being down in Ocean City, and you're in Maryland. You're in Maryland, but man, it's really pro-Trump down there. It's really Trump
Yeah,
down
it's very different. Yeah, you go into that side of the state and it's very, very different. All right, we still have a few minutes. It's amazing how much time has flown by here. Like, I can't believe I've gone through this. I did want to get your thoughts though before we depart here. Maybe we'll do one more thing. Is on this Alaskan summit, I guess called the meeting between Putin and Trump on American soil. I think Zelensky, I guess, is coming to have his say beforehand and everything like this. But all indications, I mean, what Putin wants is he wants to basically say, I want this territory. You agree that I will now, envelop this into Russia, just like we have Crimea, and that Ukraine will be left with a much smaller piece of the pie of what they were before. Zelensky doesn't want to give up anything, but he's also very concerned about security issues, which is like, how far can you trust the Russians? Because this was naked, aggression when they came and they did this. There were Nazis there, and we got to go wipe them out. Blah blah blah. And this thing is dragged on. Where we're up to now, 1,267 days.
there.
This is well past Trump's deadline, and I know he's frustrated. And I think he really wants to do something, but I think he's really frustrated with Putin about this, and he's trying. He's put those tariffs on India because India helps keep the oil, the oil money flowing even at a discounted rate. Russia will take that. Russia will take the Chinese money. They're the two biggest consumers now of the Russian oil. So Russia has suffered, but these countries are still allowing them to fund their war machine.
Well, I think that Trump goes with something in his hand that he didn't have before, which is the EU trade commitment, right? So what they've promised to do is buy a lot of American military hardware and give it to the Ukrainians. So, I think what Trump is going to tell Putin is, these guys are going to be armed to the teeth now. So, if some deal gets made and they give them some part of the land, I think it's about a fourth of the eastern 1/4 of Ukraine that they would get. And which we should note, no one has a plan to dislodge Russia from it. Russia's occupied this land for, like you say, 3-4 years now, and there's no one is ready to do what it would take to dislodge them from it. Right? Maybe when they get all that American military hardware in their hands, things will change. But right now, they really can't do that. The people in Ukraine want the war to end. They realize that it's not going to go back to the borders it was before the war started. And so Trump wants off the field. He wants it to end. I think he comes with that. I think he has some other things in mind to say, this is the best deal you're going to get. And if you violate it and try to do more, then, here are some consequences that you can't handle. Right. And I think you're mad. I think you're right that he's mad. He's not going there to play footsie, he's going there to say this is a take it or leave it thing, right? And I think my expectation is that Putin is going to be astonished at what Trump does. He's going to be taken off balance.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's putting a lot on the line to us. I mean, he's not going to have this meeting with Putin for the sake of saying that he comes away and that Putin comes out stronger or something. I mean, I think he will extract something from Putin, that we haven't been able to do before, and maybe we'll finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and an end to this thing in the not too distant future. Finally, it's just that it's been a longer slog than it needed to be, but I think you and I both talked about this 1,264 days ago or what. It was like we knew it wasn't going to be short.
That's right. It was pretty apparent from pretty early on into this.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that here we are. I mean, we have literally we were literally predicted that this was not it was going to happen. I don't know that we knew
quagmire, and it was going to require some measure like this.
It was not going to end anytime soon, and that has proven to be the point. All right, I want to do two quick things, and then we'll end the show here. One was just the story I saw, which I thought was just priceless, because of Mondami and his New York grocery store, public grocery store, is that Kansas City has a public grocery store. They shut it down. They spent $18 million and they couldn't make it work, and they shut it down. And I actually watched a short little television interview with a woman standing in a parking lot with a reporter, and she's like, what am I going to do now? It's like she came to shop and everything like this, but it was crime, it was homelessness, and the fact that they couldn't figure out how to do this. The city itself did not have the expertise to run a grocery store, because you and I have talked about this before. It's just like, it's not like you set up a grocery store and you put products on the shelves and everything magically happens and it just runs like everything else. You need expertise.
This is a cutthroat business. This is a business where you spend millions and millions of dollars, and 2% profit is great. It's fantastic. Right. And you're building multiple dozens and dozens of supply lines that have to function on time every time. And you're, managing stock and all this kind of stuff. And it's very, very low profit margin. So, I mean, I don't think New York or Kansas City got into this with the notion of making a profit per se. Right. The idea is to bring, end grocery deserts and all this kind of food deserts and whatever. But, if you go to New York, right, they don't have there's not a lot of Safeways, right? There's not a lot of Giants, because you don't have that many places where you can have that big a parking lot, right? And so, the idea of strolling through the store and getting all your needs for a week it's hard to do it in New York City, right? So you end up in the bodegas where you can get something for today, right? Everything there it's fresh and it's designed to be used fresh, which I don't really see what's terrible about that. If you're in a city where you're walking most of the time anyway, right? Not very many people drive around in New York. Like you and I use cars when we leave our house, right? We don't go catch the bus. But in New York, you kind of have to catch the bus or the cab or whatever almost every time. So I don't see how it works. I don't know what they call working, right? They may not care if they lose a ton of money, but and I don't think it really speaks to the problem.
Yeah,
I really don't. I think it's nuts. But this guy, what he's trying to do is, to be more leftist than anyone who's ever come before. So, this is what he's doing in the name of that. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, people who patronize grocery stores, so think about it. Think about it. Why does your grocery store frequently have an aisle of seasonal goods that includes plastic chairs for your patio, maybe a pool noodle, bunch of other things, because those are higher, margin products that help them with the other products. I mean, they buy produce. Produce has a limited shelf life. They then have
Right.
to they have to continually resupply, and the stuff that spoils, they get rid of it. So you have there's a short window for them to actually charge and make money on things like that. On these, and there's a constant thing they're bringing to, and the bodega system. It's fine. I mean, New York is a walking city for the most part, or
Yeah.
you live in tenements, you live in apartment buildings. You're not, like you say, you're not taking cars.
Yeah.
So it's Charleston's got another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't improve. It got worse. And I'll never forget, we were in Shreveport flying back up here after Christmas one time. The lady at the TSA gate, she had to be 90 if she was a day. And she asked Lori, she said, I can't remember if I've checked you before. Do you remember? Lori's like, no, I don't think so. She's, okay. So she checked her. It's like, come on, man. Yeah, that was one of the dumbest things. That was a Bush era stupidity there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was just thank goodness that Kristi Noem is trying to roll back some of these things. I mean, I think we're going to always have to have security. I mean, like just people are going to kind of demand that to a certain extent, but the level.
You gotta hand it to her. I think a lot of people thought that was a kind of throwaway appointment. Sort of took care of a constituency, and hey, we have some women in the cabinet type of thing. She's done a pretty good job. She's all over the place.
Yeah, she's very visible. I mean, that's for sure, and everything. All right, and the last thing I wanted to say here as we close, because I know this guy was near and dear to your heart, based on all the years we've done the show, and that was Glenn Kessler of the Washington Post and the Fact Checker. I know how much you love this guy and all that he wrote over the years. Yeah. And
he took the buyout.
He took a buyout and has launched a Substack, and it's interesting because he's still. I mean, he wrote his farewell piece was long. I mean, it was like it was ridiculous. That's the kind of thing you read at bed so you can put yourself to sleep, kind of thing. It was like 3,000 words or whatever. It was kind of ridiculous. Kind of it's just his parting shot. But on the Substack, he introduces himself and he talks about things. And one of the things that got to me was just that he talked about, well, being 95% in alignment with factcheck.org and PolitiFact, and that that's probably good. It's like exactly.
That's what we're trying to tell you. You're 95% in line with partisan hacks who have no interest in the truth.
Did he make the case that the fact checker has got a problem?
Yeah, he did. The whole thing was bizarre.
He occasionally
Mark Halperin just destroyed him in an interview. Go online and watch that. It's worth it to watch the Mark Halperin interview Glenn Kessler, because he just said, Halperin was straight at it. He has nothing to lose now, right? He'll never get back into network TV after what he did, so he just takes his shots. And he's like, you just, you fact check against Trump all you could. You use this as a tool against him. Oh, we did not. We went for truth. No, you didn't. Here's 10 examples. I mean, it's a really brutal interview. But yeah, that whole kind of thing that the Democrats always want to set up some supposedly neutral party to adjudicate all the facts, right? So anytime we're arguing about something, we submit it and we all live with the answer. Okay, that would be okay, I guess, if we could trust the person to give a straight answer, right? But all the institutions they set up to give the straight answer are hardcore leftists, right? Like PolitiFact and the whole Pointer thing, all those guys. They're horribly leftist, and they don't care anything about truth. They cannot be the arbiter, right? You can't get the left to understand that. Like, we're not going to accept the word of someone who we know lies about us and undermines us and hates our guts, right? It's not going to work that way. But all these things they set up are to be, the official neutral arbiter of the truth. One of the ones that has survived, it appears to be sort of hard for them to shake, is called All Sides.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
And they rate whether an article is biased to the left or biased to the right. There's certain phrasings and words that get used and so forth. But it's interesting to see, right? There is somebody doing it that has not yet been destroyed by the left, but they'll get to them, and you won't be able to use that one either.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll be very curious to see if Kessler can actually get anybody to pay for his Substack.
Yeah, I mean, there's always people that want to believe, so it won't be zero.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this is true because nothing else the guy says is true. But Norm Eisen said in an interview the other day that he started some newsletter with Jen Rubin after she got bounced from the Post. And he said the first day they had 600,000 subscribers. So, those are people who are willing to pay for their Trump hate. Someone asked me the other day, like, what's the most destructive force in the country? And I said, the stupid Trump hater. The person who just, whatever Trump says, they hate it, and they've got a million reasons why it'll never work. But those people are they're destroying the discourse of the country because of personal animosity.
All right. With that, we will close the show, except for, I guess, one more final comment is that our question for Brian is that, will the Astros win the West?
Well, I don't know, because our closer just went on the DL, so it'll be a wild chase. It's it's really interesting in my house, right? Because my wife is a huge Mariners fan. This is disgusting.
They're hot on their tail.
Yeah. The other big thing for me this week is we took Marty to college. So Marty is up at McDaniel. He had his first football practice this morning. He's signed up. He's got his equipment, and he's a college football player. I'm missing.
How cool is that? Okay, yeah. I didn't realize that was part of the reasoning going there too. That's great. That's wonderful. You may be busy making a few extra trips here for games.
I'm gonna be going past your house a lot here in the next few months.
All right, so that is it, folks. Appreciate you joining us today. I think we had a great show. We actually covered fewer topics but more in depth. So my long list got really short today. But please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And what's next week? Next week is fine. I think it's the week after I have to take off. So anyway, we'll see you again next week, and hopefully have another great show. Thanks, everybody.